The after episode. Let's go for it.
Yeah.
Because it's got a rant. It's brewing. Let's do
Okay.
it.
Okay. So the thing is, a lot of these claims about where electricity is cheaper than where they say like, oh, the production of green energy, so like your wind and solar is cheaper than coal, right? It's based entirely on something called the unit cost per energy. Unit cost per kilowatt, which is a complete and utter misleading figure that you can ever use, because you can get that really, really low through things like subsidies, right? You can get it really, really low through things like eminent domain, acquiring property, right? You can get that figure can be as cheap as you freaking want based on the level of government like intervention into the market. So just to give you an example, the current cost of production in France, right, is 0.82 cents per kilowatt for nuclear energy. Now you might be sitting there going like, oh, nuclear energy must be really, really, it's clearly the best way to produce electricity. But that unit cost, right, per kilowatt of energy, is just representative of all the government subsidies, of all the infrastructure that's owned by the government and everything that they're not paying for themselves. Sorry, that they're not paying themselves for. So it's like the most disingenuous way that you can possibly like grade the price of electricity against each other. Now, I personally say the best way you can do it is with the actual retail cost to the customer, right? Because that is indicative of the price in that particular area for that person. The price of electricity isn't the same for everyone on the planet, right? There's infrastructure costs that come from the actual line all the way to your place. There's the energy generation costs, and there's obviously like a whole bunch of other things to do with retail factors like your service level agreements, and to cover intermittency and redundancy and all these other things. But the point is, all of that gets packaged through on a retail cost. And that gives you, if you can get the retail cost across the board for all the different types of generation, that tells you what the most efficient for that area actually is. In some areas, that might be renewable energy. In some areas, it's going to be a big centralized power generator like methane or natural gas. Hell, it might even be coal, right? But it's all variant on like these calculations that you can do, and design engineers for an electricity grid do. And sort of make rational decisions about what the grid should look like. That's why I get really, really pissed off with this FERPI of the unit cost per generation. It's really, really annoying. It can be misleading, and people just don't understand what that statistic means.
Absolutely. And I mean, the simple thing is, if it really were cheaper, it wouldn't need a subsidy. It wouldn't need billions of dollars. You wouldn't need a renewable energy target. And there's no doubt that solar and wind are getting cheaper and cheaper every year, and that's great. So more and more of that will naturally be part of the market. But
yeah,
and people attack us because we write an article about this issue, and they assume we hate renewable energy, that we're in love with coal. Of course we're not. If you could use a renewable source cheaper than you could use a non-renewable source, well, and it had the same properties of being reliable and all of those kinds of things, of course you'd go the renewable. But
go on. Yeah, I was actually going to say, when I was in university doing my thesis, so I'm an electrical engineer by training. I don't do electrical engineering anymore because I get paid to do other stuff. But when I was doing my research project, we found very good unit use cases where solar was actually the most beneficial way to work things. And it was basically in a very remote area. And this is why I said the retail price is very indicative of what the best energy for a certain area is. So if you're like the use case that we used was actually a remote farming community in far north Queensland. And it was just like the cheapest electricity that they could ever get. And we calculated it as something like 64 cents or something to the dollar, 64 cents to the kilowatt, was solar energy. Now, if you tried to do like coal, you'd be paying over $1 just in the transmission cost to get it out there. Mm-hmm. And it was just like the thing is, you are absolutely right, right? There are solutions where renewable energy is the best option. There are definitely solutions where coal is the best option, and I think the Chinese policy is actually right on this. The Chinese take anything, right? They'll take nuclear if they can get it. They'll take coal if they can get it. They'll take natural gas if they can get it. They apply solar and wind whenever they want to get it as well. Actually, India's starting to tack on to the same policy. And I think that that's the best way to go. You're not going to have a single energy like this. The debate that we seem to have in Australia that's really bad is that we all want to seem to create a single energy grid.
Yes,
that's
what I was about to say. You know, for the problem particularly for the left on this issue, is they think one solution will do everything, rather than saying we need. And this is kind of the Hayekian argument: is you have different solutions for different people based on local knowledge. So, you know, for remote areas, solar works great. You know, if you're in Tasmania, hydro works great. You know, like or New Zealand, hydro works great. And maybe in South Australia, geothermal will eventually work. Maybe not. You know, it's hard to know. But like, they want to have, we're just going to impose this one solution on everybody. And the right does this to a lesser extent. I mean, I think if nuclear was on the table, they might talk about that more, but it's not really. And one of the challenges, so you've got that as an issue, but then you've also got the issue of the subsidies. So I think they don't understand that the subsidies is what is holding back development. Because once you start subsidizing the current technology, you'll get the current technology. That's all you'll get. You won't get the next generation of whatever it is, because why experiment on something that's uncertain when you can farm the subsidy and make money off of just getting subsidized stuff? So
yeah, spot on. The second lie they like to tell is that that the non-renewable sources are getting all of these subsidies, and you just dig a little bit. Like, I haven't gone complete into the detail. Just like the little bit I've bothered to look into is clearly wrong. Like, they say, it's getting all of this rebate on fuel excise. The same. Well,
if your car can't go on the road, you get a fuel excise rebate.
Exactly. And that's the majority of the figure they always quote, and you know, it's clear they're misleading. But the problem is, I think they just don't care if what they're saying is true or not. It's about winning. You know, they're in it to win, not to be right.
Well, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think obviously they want to win, just as we want to win. I mean, I think I'll make a general statement because I don't want to be unfair to them and, you know, treat them differently than I should expect libertarians to be treated. But, like, you know, bias blinds you. So, like, I think they genuinely think they're doing the right thing. I just think that they think, like, in our case, they would say we have been corrupted by special interests. You know, we've been subverted by, you know, the fossil fuel industry, and therefore we can't be trusted. And, you know, like, we would probably say the same thing about, say, like, the UN and, like, all the money that it hands out. Like, that perverts incentives. So, like, if you are currently benefiting from climate change being this grand existential threat that's going to annihilate everybody in the next 50 years, you know, and you're doling out money to research organizations, we would say public choice. You know, there's special concentrated benefits, dispersed costs. Therefore, you know, we have to be skeptical about what they're saying because it's not necessarily actually going to be sort of lining up with the truth. So, I mean, you know, like, I more or less agree with you. But, like, I think they, well, yeah, I think they probably are being, I think they genuinely think they're doing the right thing. I just think they don't consider these other alternatives, so.
Yeah. So what's the third lie they say?
Sorry? The third lie?
Yeah.
There's many lies, but third one's not coming to mind. But those are the two biggies, I think, is that renewables are cheaper. And that, and then you say, no, they're not. If they were, people would use them, and then they go, that, you know, the non-renewables, they're getting all these subsidies, and then they'll just dump on your Facebook wall, you know, all these random articles that they find, and whenever you Google these issues, you just come across so much renewable energy propaganda. I mean, people make out that it's this small industry, but it's not. They're receiving $5 billion in subsidies every year, so they're just as much an industry as coal coal and the traditional energy generators are.
Yeah. I was going to say, the other one that I typically hear is, what is it? Oh, it's escaped me. Peak oil. That's right.
Yeah.
Oil is-
Oh,
Yeah.
peak oil.
That
Yeah.
yeah.
Or peak coal. Yeah. It was just like, it's just it was just like there was a movie about this. Yeah, no. So the peak. There's always a story about we've hit peak oil and it doesn't matter because oil will be so expensive.
Can I just
And
say
then,
I
you know,
love peak oil? Like, I think it's like my second favorite conspiracy theory after Australia being a corporation. Like, it really is so...
it's third for me.
Really? What's your favorite?
Oh no, my favorite is like companies of corporations, blah 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 blah. Same as you,
Yeah.
right?
Australia's
But my
corporation.
yeah. But my second one is actually that the robots will replace all people.
Yeah, but no, see, I don't think that's not a conspiracy theory. That's not like bananas. Like, that's not unrealistic. Anyway, we're getting subject. We're gonna have a second after episode where like we talk about our favorite conspiracy theories. But yeah, anyway. Yeah, peak oil. Peak oil is great.
Yeah. Actually, I need to reorder that. My first is actually that the Queen is a lizard. I forgot about that.
That is a conspiracy theory, and that's a brilliant one. But then, I remember back, so it would have been sort of middle of, so like 2005, 2006, 2007. Like, this is back before sort of like social media, so like internet forums were actually a thing. And there was a forum in the Sydney Anglican Diocese, and it was actually a really good forum. Like, there was lots of really good people on there. But there was this one guy who was obsessed with peak oil. And I mean, to be fair to him, like, that was during the period of time where like oil prices were going up, I think, at that stage, or like it was because it was kind of like during last sort of decade, there was this big spike, and that was where peak oil really sort of took off as a theory. But then sort of fracking came in, and it just kind of and the GFC and all the rest of it just like killed the price. And yeah, but for that time, like, he just, every single post was on it, and he was completely impervious, like, in every single way to any possibility that was wrong. And I went back, I think I found like the forum that was the sort of the spiritual successor, and he was still on there talking about peak oil like a couple of years ago. It's like, dude, that ship has sailed. It's like the Ice Age in the 70s. Like, it's not a thing anymore. Or like Y2K. Like, you have been debunked. Accept that you're wrong. You need to just move on with your life.
Yeah, that's what a lot of these people need to do. But like, I mean, like I said, the issue is that everybody seems to want to create one big grid, and that there is a group that I got added in, which I don't ever want to post on, because it's toxic. It's basically a nuclear forum, and there's just these people talking about how they should be like nuclear power plants in Australia. Similar thing, right? They are basically the antithetical version of the Green Left, where instead of saying we want, you know, all these solar power plants everywhere and windmill farms up the wazoo, we want a nuclear power plants. Yeah, and I'm sitting there going like, nuclear power plants probably would work for Sydney.
Yep.
Right? Perhaps Melbourne, assuming they maintain their growth rates. But the cost of electricity in Brisbane would go up. The cost in South Australia, fucking hell, like, seriously, that would go up tons as well. It does not make sense to create nuclear power plants in areas where you're not basically trying to deliver. Like, there's two circumstances where you get your nuclear power plants, right? You either have loads of small cities that are really close to each other, right?
Like,
which is what happens.
Germany or France?
Yeah, which is what I was going to say, like Germany and France.
Japan.
Right?
Yeah.
And Japan, right? You've got like those situations. Japan also has the opposite, other one where you've got a densely packed cluster of people, which is Tokyo, right? And they've literally got a single nuclear power plant that powers all of Tokyo.
And
right?
You can't build anywhere. You basically like, you have to give up a lot of like residential area to build a power plant. So you don't want something that's belching smoke across like the countryside. Like, you know, in Australia, you can put like a power plant in the middle of nowhere and it doesn't bother anybody. But you can't do that in Japan because everything is close to everything because it's 70% mountains, and that 30% has got 125 million people on it. So you can't do something like China. Like, if you put a smoky power plant on there, you're just going to end up drowning everybody in emissions.
Yeah, effectively. And that's the reality of it. That's why they have nuclear power plants where they do. Um, it just I don't contribute to this group because it is toxic like that. They're not open to this idea that electricity is like any other service. Sorry, any other product. And as a product, it's going to differ where you're delivering it. And that's my biggest sort of thing as an engineer to contribute to the debate. It's that you guys don't realize this, but electricity is a product and it changes, right, based on your needs, based on your circumstantial needs. And if there was anything that could change the political debate in the country, I would say that's the thing they need to do. And come to think of it, you can say the same thing about the NBN debate, where you've got the left saying fiber needs to be put in everywhere. Hey. You've got the right saying wireless needs to be put in everywhere. Yep. And then you've got the engineers who are saying, the creation of the laptop didn't eliminate a desktop computer. I'm on a desktop computer right now, yep. Right? Tablets didn't get rid of my mobile phone, right? These are just new products. You need to stop. People need to stop thinking in terms of all innovation as all or nothing propositions. And I have to realize that we will solve problems based on the problems that are presented, not as one size fits all solutions.
Well, I mean, Adam Smith talked about this back in 1780, whatever the hell it was, in the theory of moral sentiments. He talked about the man of system, he's wise in his own conceit, and thinks of people as being sort of playthings on the chessboard. What's the quote? Yeah, here it is. He does not consider that the pieces on the chessboard have no other principle of motion besides that which the hand impresses upon them, but that in the great chessboard of human society, every single piece has a principle of motion of its own, altogether different. So it's people think they can run the world, they can't run the world, and it makes them sad, and it doesn't stop them from trying. That's why libertarianism is so kind of unique in its emphasis. It just says, well, you can't run the world, and pretty much every other philosophy says we can run the world.
Yeah, so I guess my sort of final say on this topic is I wish that people would get the fuck out of the way and let engineers design solutions. Hell, not even engineers. I'm sure you can probably get anyone who understands electricity to really design a solution that fits each local community. And that way you have something that works for that community that hits the triple constraint of price, time, and availability.
Are you saying, Vickers, there should be a spontaneous order and a system of negotiating, say, different competing desires through a decentralized mode of exchange? What kind of radical are you?
I'm an absolute madman.
Yes. Craziness. Can't have that sort of talk out of here. All right.
Yeah. Sorry, Justin. I think we're out completely.
No, that's it. That's all good.
Right. Okay, well,
that's it.
I think that's it. Unless because you want to have one more rant. You said you had a rant before, and I don't think it was related to power, so...
Oh, yeah, no, it was about...
At this point, with the after show, Justin, if you just want to clock out, you can, that's fine. We just go till we get sick. I'm going to go grab some dinner and come back, so if you need to go, feel free to go.
I was going to say, Trump's economic madness. So I legitimately... For a man who runs businesses... I am confused by his economic policies because he doesn't seem to understand the simplest concepts of comparative advantage. He doesn't seem to understand the simplest concepts of, he says make America first, and that's fine, but I was expecting him to be like any other politician and say that and not actually be a total cunt about it. But I'm sitting there and going I genuinely think he doesn't get it now. And it's based on the fact that I think a large part of his business is based on his name, right? It's based on making his money off his name. I don't think his business actually delivers anything as a product anymore.
No. So Kevin Williamson at National Review, who I think is actually probably I think he's kind of libertarian-ish, but he's brilliant. I think every libertarian should read him. He's made the point repeatedly that this is a guy that lost money. He went bankrupt 3 times with a casino in Atlantic City, a place where they have nothing but casinos. He couldn't even run you couldn't even run a casino at Vegas. He just...
Well,
so, I actually think he is incompetent. I actually think you're right. He is making money off his name, and part of that is The Apprentice. So that's something where he doesn't need to run anything. He just needs to be a personality.
Well, there's his books as well.
But they're written by others. They're ghostwritten.
Yeah. but it still made money off it. No,
Sure,
but you're right. Yeah, you're right. You're right. I think a large part of his money comes from his actual name and like licensing it out, because like there was that Wall Street article which made the same point. They said he inherited $100 million in 1976. If he had stuck that in a term deposit, he would have $6 billion right now, and he's estimated to be worth about $2 billion if they add up all his assets. But of course they don't know, because he could have liquidated a whole bunch of cash somewhere and hidden it. He says he's worth $10 billion, and I'm sitting there going like, I don't know, those buildings.
We're gonna get his tax returns. His tax returns are gonna get leaked. I have no doubt.
Fortune came up with a figure. It was more than $2 billion, I think.
Yeah, Fortune came up with something closer to 6 or something. I can't remember.
Yeah.
What it was.
With Trump, I think there's two competing theories out at the moment, and I'm not sure which one's right. Either Trump is a total idiot who's convinced people, the 50% of the population who's even more stupid than he is, to vote for him. That's one theory, and that's the theory that's in the mainstream media. Then there's the, I was just Googling his name, the Scott Adams theory, that he's actually a genius puppet
As in the
master.
Dilbert?
Yeah, the Dilbert guy. Have you read his articles about hypnosis?
As soon as you said like he's a genius puppet master, I went like, oh, that sounds like the thing that was on Dilbert. I've read it. Given the way that he seems to pretty much do whatever Steve Bannon tells him, I think he's an idiot, and Steve Bannon is the puppet master. I think Donald Trump is the puppet.
Yes. That might make sense, because it's either one or the other. He's either a super genius, or he's a complete clown, and and it's hard to know which. I mean, in the end, he won the presidency. He beat all of those Republican nominees.
Yeah, to be fair though, one of them's best offer was a guac bowl. Please clap.
There we go. Yes. Yeah, nuts. There was but it's astounding. I mean, do you think Sanders might have won had he been the candidate rather than Hillary?
Yeah, actually, I've said several times that Sanders would have won it. And I think, because firstly, I've signed up to, I get Sanders' email. Even now, his PACs are still organizing right now. In fact, they're constantly trying to get money. They're constantly offering to mail out Sanders gear to people, and to revolution gear to people, and be like, go out there, protest Trump and everything like that. So Sanders, I will say this, unlike Kasich, unlike who was the other one? Kane? Is it Kane?
Which one? Sorry.
The third Democratic contender. I can't remember who it was.
I don't know. I don't follow it that closely.
Well, okay. So I signed up to the email lists of certain people with certain emails, so I could follow the chain of who's giving, which PAC gave details to who. Screw you, Marco Rubio. Marco Rubio's PAC gave all my details to Ted Cruz's PAC. Those bastards.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, he beat Ted Cruz, so that was kind of, kind of surprising.
But to all of those PACs credit, to the only PAC that I give credit for is the Bernie Sanders PAC, who, as far as I can tell, has never shared any of my details.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
I think Hillary was just such a bad candidate, so I'm kind of inclined to think he won because Hillary was so bad, rather than any sort of Scott Adams theory. Sorry.
I actually no. See, here's the thing. I actually think that he won because Hillary Clinton is a thoroughly unappealing person.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. I think she probably is more popular in the country. But to tell you the truth, if I was voting as an American citizen, right, and my choices were between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, I'd go get drunk at the local.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, up until the election, I was kind of, sticking to the safe side. Oh, I hate Hillary, but Trump can't win. He's insane. That's what I said to people. But a part of me, when Hillary lost, was like, yes. And I went out and joined, had drinks with so-called libertarians who were like, Trump, Trump, Trump. And yeah, it's just there was something huge unappealing about him.
Yeah, so this is the rant I did want to have, was about those libertarians who go Trump, 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 but also buy into his economic crap. And here's the thing, right? Like, so they say, like, they want to get American manufacturing jobs back, and there's a great comic by Learn Liberty that explains why that's a really, really retarded idea. And it basically explains comparative advantage, right? So yes, America could build cars in the United States at a slightly less efficient rate than, say, if you had an Iowa potato farmer producing large amounts of potatoes.
Oh, yeah, I've watched that video.
And then trading with the Japanese and bringing back cheaper cars from Japan. And I'm sitting there going, like, do you see where this is going? I mean, it's a comparative advantage question. Yes, America could do everything in the world, but there are some things where it's probably better if they optimize certain areas, right? And trade with people to get that thing. Now, that's not to say that America might not have an absolute advantage, but you've still got the marginal opportunity cost between the two to compare.
Yeah, but
right.
Okay, so like, which libertarians are doing this though? Because I mean, I know obviously like the culture war stuff. There's a lot of libertarians who I think are really on board with this, and I think there's a lot of people who would say like they'd say.
Have you not been paying attention to ALF? There are tons of libertarians on ALF that. Yeah, tons.
Okay, maybe, I mean, I don't pay that much attention to that. But I mean,
ALF isn't a libertarian forum. That's the problem.
Well, actually, yeah, you're right.
Actually, it is pretty libertarian. But anyway, I mean, my experience is that I've just noticed people drowning out protectionist nonsense.
I like to drown out protectionist nonsense with my games, but that's not to say that it doesn't exist. I say that you get
I mean, there's obviously like, to pick the names, someone like Luke Ruffley, who's like essentially not, they're just an alt-right or conservative. They're not like, I mean, someone like Tim Wilms, I think, is a libertarian, and if you said protectionism is bad, he'd say yes, it is. Or say Paul McCarthy from Mancal, I think he's pretty pro-Trump. Like he has expectations that Trump will do good things, but like if you said protectionism is bad, he's going to say yeah, it's bad, and he doesn't support that of Trump. So I mean, that's been my experience of sort of pro-Trump libertarians, is more that the typical response, things, and it's like the good's going to outweigh the bad in a big way.
So the responses I've been getting, or at least I've been seeing, is that but the free trade that's been organized is globalist. It's not, it's all crony capitalism. It's not real free trade. So we have to have an even playing field. Like that's what I've heard.
Milton Friedman came up with a really good response to those arguments in the Free to Choose series, which was basically if the Japanese want to use their tax dollars to subsidize our steel, then we should let them do it.
Yeah, well, actually, his exact one was if they want to subsidize a higher standard of living in America, we should be thanking them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And I make that point to everyone who goes like, "Oh, cheap Chinese steel." I go like, "Hey, if the Chinese want to give us a higher standard of living, I am all for that. I'm all for all of China standing down there and lifting us all up. It's fine by me. I have no objection whatsoever."
And to think about that the subsidy thing as well, though, because people would then respond, yeah, but like it will kill the industry here in Australia. But you say, well, if they flood the market with cheap steel and they subsidise it for a while, it's not like we forget how to make steel. It's not like the factories shut down if they do, which they probably don't. But if they do, it's like we forget how to make steel, or we forget how to make cars. Like if the prices go up and it becomes affordable to build those things here, then we'll build those things here. Like. They sort of don't seem to understand the kind of the dynamic nature of prices and how it guides choices.
Well, actually, my favorite canard is usually that they'll make two arguments on that. The first is they'll say, "Oh, it puts us at a security risk against that country," right? where if it puts us at their mercy. And I'm sitting there and going like, does it really though? I mean, like, we now have a trade relationship where we are paying them, right, for steel, and you think that they're going to cancel their steel contract and invade us? Why? We're paying them. Yeah.
If anything, they become dependent on us buying that steel.
Correct.
But in the 20th century, the two biggies for protectionism were steel and they were cars. And every country wanted to be exporting steel for some reason, and every country in the world wanted to be exporting cars, which makes sense because it was a symbol of modernism. In the 21st century, that new industry is renewable energy. So every country in the world, their politicians gets up and says, we're going to be a world leader in renewable energy. And
they always say energy independent.
Energy. So if Germany, if America, China wants to spend billions and billions of their taxpayer dollars subsidizing the production of solar panels, we should just buy cheap solar panels off them.
Yeah, I'm totally fine with that.
Mm.
I think it's a great idea. In fact, I think what we should do, instead of having a renewable energy target, we just go like, hey, guys, cheap, solar panels. You can buy them from China, you can buy them from the States, you can buy them from Canada. They're all subsidized. Just pick them up.
Yes, and that's a real possibility, actually, is that all these other countries are subsidising because they all think if they get in. The other thing is that there's this myth of urgency too. Part of it's because of they have that tipping point theory about the carbon emissions will get to a point and then it'll be irreversible.
We're already past that point apparently.
Oh, right, and but because of that. Like, you think about it, remember when John Howard was Prime Minister and they were screaming because he was cutting whatever renewable energy subsidies were around then? He was cut back them and they were squealing. Imagine if we spent billions of dollars subsidising renewable energy back then we would have invested heavily in the last generation of technology. So people kind of forget in technology, with time, it gets cheaper and better. So kind of the longer we can extend the life of whatever old coal plant we have now and whatnot, surely in 10 years' time, whatever technology is available will be better than what's available now.
Well, see, so I read Bastiat's The Law pretty recently, and that's a point that he makes is, he talks about the socialists. They have this vision, like they think that unless they are acting, people are just sort of these passive, inert things that have no real motivation of their own. And I think that's kind of how, again, both the left and the right, but particularly the left in the case of renewables, they just think if the government does not do this thing, then no one's going to do this thing because they don't understand prices, they don't understand spontaneous order. They just think that people sort of just going to lie around and sort of just like, please send me solar panel, and just kind of lie there on the side of the road, helpless, unless Big Daddy government comes along and scoops them up and delivers them to renewable nirvana or whatever. So I think that's where the impetus for government involvement is coming in. Like I think there's probably, if there was sort of a trade left or a free trade left, like they might say like, we just need to get out of the way of these things so we can develop them. We need to stop subsidizing, if we are at all subsidizing other things. And you can have the same argument, but like that's just not how they view the world.
There is the issue of externalities, and I do think no one in the libertarian community has really yet come up with a really good answer to the externality problem, which is the main justification the left have for introducing, more government and socialism and whatnot. And I
don't think there is an answer to that. Like I think it is. There is
an answer to externalities. You privatize them.
Yeah, but like the collective action issues around climate change, I don't think can be solved because it's so indirect.
Insurance.
Yeah, so I think that deals with the problem without stopping the problem from happening in the first place. So, if you say, can we stop climate change? The answer is no, we can't, even in a private world. But can you, can you essentially endure it and still have prosperity and still have people survive? Well, yeah, you can, because you have insurance, you have prices. If water becomes more scarce, the price goes up. If land, if for some reason the oceans start to swallow up the available land, then prices of land goes up. Or the incentive to build massive, gigantic walls at the edge of the coast becomes much more viable. The Netherlands are a perfect example of a country that's literally been dragged out of the ocean. They just built walls and filled in the space. Problem solved. So, those are the solutions. But when I talk with my lefty mates, they say, oh, well, can you just stop climate change from happening? And it's like, well, nothing.
Neither can you.
Yeah, well, that's
but neither
that's
can
what I
they.
was
That's
that's
the
what I
point.
say as well.
Yeah.
But when I sort of spruik the private solution, really you can't privately stop it from happening if it is going to happen. And Matt Ryan has days where it's like, even if it does happen, it's going to happen in 100 years. How much more wealthy will we be if we pursue pro-growth programs, solutions that involve emissions?
I would literally just use Milton Friedman's argument on this. I don't know how to do that, but you don't know either. Right? And the question is here, though, what we're talking about is whether you and I come to an agreement or whether some person comes to an agreement and tells us what to do. That's the discussion.
I think you are right, though. I mean, the privatising is the main way. Is once something becomes property, then people value it. But we need to get much better. Look, I watched a Cato Institute video on this, and I was hoping for really good ammunition on this argument, and they were just like, people, as economic development gets better, people care more about the environment, so they do things. And I think that's true for a polluted river or what have you. But for something like carbon, which you can't see, it doesn't really affect you. It's sort of it's a complicated one, and I think we have the answers there. But I think this is why you've seen libertarians going so far down the path of climate skepticism, is because people aren't, no one's really putting the work in to come up with the libertarian solution to some of these problems.
No, libertarians don't do a lot of actually just outlining a solution. They just outline the problems of government interference generally, which is all right, but at the same time, we do need to actually explain solutions.
Yeah, because I'm absolutely convinced that, one, I don't think the government solutions to climate change will work. Like, you look at all the money they've spent, a lot of it's in, like at the moment we're funding wind turbines rather than perhaps efficiency. There's finding more efficiency in the network. The government's not the right answer, but we need to find out, all right, how do we redefine property rights so people actually, value things and they trade things and what have you.
Well, so the thing about, just to go back to libertarians and not having solutions, that's because we don't believe in singular solutions. We believe in lots of opportunity to solve problems for yourself. So, if you say, okay, let's can car subsidies, well, what will people do? Well, we don't know what people will do because we believe in spontaneous order. We don't believe there is a grand plan that I can define for your life. All I can do is provide you with the opportunity to make the most of your own life. So, I mean, I think, so that's a problem for libertarians and anybody who sells smaller government. It's like, okay, let's deregulate, let's get government out of schools. Well, what will the school be? What will it look like? I don't know what it will look like, because the whole point is things will happen that I did not expect.
But with schools, I can explain that. I can say, this is why, there'll be more diversity in the type of schools that you have. The market will decide. I can argue any day with someone why a free market in education would be superior to.
But not in specifics. So for the socialist, to use Bastiat's term, the socialist will say the school will look like X. It'll have X amount of students. It'll have this amount. In the computer lab will be this amount of things. I mean, the MN is a good example. Every home will have fiber to the node, or 97% of the households will have fiber to the node or fiber to the home, and then the other 4% will have satellite. Well, the libertarian solution to telecommunications won't. We can say you'll get cheaper service, you'll get more diversity. Blah 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 blah. You get these broad things will happen, but you can't say specifics because you don't know the specifics. That's the whole point.
True.
So I think that's part of the challenge of selling liberty in general. Is that problem? But I think one of the solutions, like one of the possible, so on the weekend or last week, I was talking with some guys from Mancal. We were talking about this whole thing, and I sort of said, well, the brilliant thing about Uber is essentially it was a libertarian solution that arose independent of the state that the state couldn't get rid of, and so we can point to something and say, you want to know what the world looks like without the taxi cartel? It looks like Uber, or it looks like Lyft. It's more efficient, it's cheaper, it's more effective.
It's safer.
It's safer. Like we can give all these reasons, and people can experience for themselves and say, "Oh, this is better." And so that sort of subverts the whole public choice problem of dispersed costs. Because if you use Uber, you are now got a concentrated benefit. So you've essentially got the concentrated benefits of Uber up against the concentrated benefits of the taxi industry, and the consumer can by their own choice will pretty much always choose Uber or something like it because it is superior. It's hard to do that with schools because we don't have the alternative. Like, I can't just build a school and do whatever the hell I like because that's not how the funding works. That's not, and kind of the expectations would be very difficult to deal with, or even something like hospitals or universities. We don't really have the freedom to just kind of do our own thing. And so it's hard to point to the alternative because the alternative doesn't exist yet. I mean, imagine go back to 2005 and say, what's the alternative to internet forums? Like, you can't point to Facebook because Facebook doesn't exist yet. I mean, I guess MySpace existed, but but if you said in 2009, well, the future is Facebook, people would say, oh, well, now I understand because they can see it for themselves. They can see the difference.
The future hasn't been invented yet.
Exactly. Yeah. So I went to a conference for Christian students. The last time I went to that conference, the iPhone wasn't a thing. It didn't exist. Smartphones basically didn't exist. And if you'd asked me then, even though I was kind of into technology, what does the future look like? I would have never said an iPhone. I just couldn't imagine it. Even though I think I'm relatively imaginative, I just couldn't imagine it. Where now I can't imagine a world without it.
Yep.
All right.
Yep.
You guys haven't finished this plate, or until you finished, you're done.
No, actually, no. I think we're done. Well, I'm done.
All right. I'm done.
Yeah, me too. Thanks, guys. That was great.
Yeah.
Normally, Justin, we don't talk for this long. Normally, we do go for half an hour and then buzz off. So if you're interested in coming on again, we normally will only rope you in for half an hour.
Okay. All right, then. That was great. Oh, watch Q&A tonight. Daisy Cousins and Helen Andrews are on.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. It should be good. See ya.
All right. Go catch you guys.
See you, mate.
Yeah.